Good evening, you're watching Spotlight. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. Our big focus story before we, of course, turn to our debate issue has been the big Youngistan politics, which, of course, has broken out at various university campuses. The Delhi University cauldron continuing to simmer. Anguished teachers and students thronging campuses in protest against the Ramjas College violence, while the NSUI, of course, sat on a symbolic one-day hunger strike at the arts faculty, followed by a mashal rally. Students and teachers of DU and JNU, along with ISA members, are staging a march from the Khalsa College to the arts faculty. In fact, our correspondent Rahul Gautam, who is tracking the protest, has spoken with some workers of the ABVP. Let's play out that interview.
And according to me, in any such kind of seminar or any such kind of event, basically Ramjas admission, first of all, there is a university admission, there is a Delhi police. All three bodies should be held responsible. But ABP bypassed all three of them and took law in their hands.
ABP is brushing aside all the allegations, saying they're not involved in stuff. And it was the NSUI and left that body their action.
Basically, ABVP tried to impose their ideology in every single institution of this country. It is not this, it is the RSS which is behind all this. So basically, what they have been doing is imposing their own ideology. They can conduct a seminar on Ram Mandir inside the Delhi University, but they can't tolerate any such kind of incident in Ramjas. Why can't they just put up this issue to the police or to the concerned authority? They took law in their hand, molested girls.
Squarely blamed what had occurred in the
Okay, let's turn to our other big story, of course, of the evening. A victim of a suspected hate crime in Kansas, Srinivas Kuchibhotla, was today cremated in his hometown of Hyderabad. Meanwhile, the accused, Adam Purinton, appeared in court for the first time, where he asked the judge for a public defender. President Donald Trump, who is very vocal on social media, however, has so far maintained a stony silence over the matter. However, Hilary Clinton has tweeted saying that with threats and hate crimes on the rise, we shouldn't have to tell the President of the US to do his part. He must step up and speak out, unquote. Well, Foreign Secretary S Jaishankar, who is on a 4-day visit to the US, is expected to raise the issue of the Kansas shooting and the changed rules for H-1B visas.
From our country's founding, we've been dedicated to protecting the freedom of our citizens' rights to worship. No one in America should feel afraid to follow the religion of their choosing freely and openly. The President is dedicated to preserving this originating principle of our nation. And while we're at it, I don't want to get ahead of the law enforcement, but I was asked the other day about the story in Kansas, the shooting in Kansas. And while the story is evolving, early reports out of Kansas are equally disturbing.
When they're personally coming and extending the support, Sushma Swaraj helped a lot to move the body from there to here. And after that, himself, Sri Venkaiah Naidu Garu, also came to our home and assured any support and any recommendation or any delegation to stop this violence over there. And governments and even the state government also, they assured for that strong delegation to happen from AP, Telangana, so that until the violence is stopped.
Well, let's open this up now. Pramit Pal Chaudhary, Foreign Affairs Editor of the Hindustan Times, is joining us live in our studios. Also with us is Shashank, former diplomat. He's live with us in our studios as well. Arvind Gupta, spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party, is joining us live from Delhi as well. Pramit Pal Chaudhary, if I can begin with you first. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, of course, is very active on social media, from the Oscars to Meryl Streep to, of course, other issues. He comments on pretty much everything. Is it surprising then that he hasn't spoken out on what happened in Kansas on this pretty apparent racist crime?
It's not a complete surprise, because what actually gets him excited seems to be highly personalized. There is no, he's not a process man. So in other words, he doesn't sit, what would normally happen with most presidents is that you would have a team out there who would come and say, these are the things that you need to do politically, and then tweet accordingly. In fact, I would argue most presidents don't even tweet themselves. They have a team that does the tweeting. And in the case of Trump, it seems quite a bit of the tweeting is just done by him personally. And because he doesn't seem to work with a normal staff structure, a lot of this, it's sort of random pieces of information come his way and get him moved and excited in one direction or another. It's perfectly possible that somebody will raise it with him at some point, and then suddenly he may decide to tweet. But until that happens, because he's not a normal politician and he's not a person who's worked in government, it's almost very difficult to predict, as you pointed out, what exactly catches his interest in terms of his Twitter account.
Yeah, and you know, Mr. Shashank, his silence on this issue will only exacerbate the fears of the minority community, won't it? Already they have been, reeling under the fear of what could happen under a Trump presidency. That has come true now, of course. And his silence on issues like this will only raise their fears and not assuage them at all, Mr. Shashank.
Actually, it is for individuals to take their own decision. Like in this particular case, Srinivas's wife told him that he should get back to India because things were getting difficult. But somehow he had the gut feeling that things are all right, Americans are very friendly people. And that also proved true because one of the white Americans jumped in and he tried to save Srinivas, but did not succeed. So I think what is happening is that President Trump has been making a statement like many other presidential candidates have done in the past, that they must do something to reduce joblessness among the white Americans. And they have done or not done something, but I think President Trump came to power mainly because of this ground, and he does not have any policy to give jobs to these people. So therefore, I think his being silent on the subject also means that they have no policy to give jobs to the Americans because they throw out all the Indians and most of the foreigners.
Yeah.
Then how will they manage all the companies? I mean, one says that yes, Indians are going there because they have got jobs. In India, there are no jobs available for them of the type that they would like to do. So that is perfectly fine. So I feel that it's really for the individual Indians to decide whether they want to stay on in America, whether they feel satisfied, or in the communities that they live in, or they feel that they are threatened, then they have to come back or go elsewhere.
Arvind Gupta, will this be part of the Indo-US dialogue as well? Of course, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump would want to forge a pretty close and healthy relationship. But would these issues have to be touched upon, sir? I know it will be, of course, issues which could be met with some sort of cynicism from President Donald Trump and could affect our relationship, of course, going forward. But since it is of prime concern of the Indian American community and their family members, of course, back home, will the Modi government touch upon these issues in their dialogues with the Trump administration, Arvind Gupta?
See, I think that first I have to start with saying that as an IT professional, as somebody who stayed in America, as somebody who understands the industry, we strongly condemn what happened in Kansas. We all stand by the Srinivas's family in this hour of grief with them. But secondly, as Mr. Shashank also pointed out, that there is two sides to this. It took us 20 plus years maybe in America to become being labeled as earlier they were the dot busters and being labeled as mouse charmers and just gas station and motel owners to really knowledge workers and the computer geeks that we are known in the US. It took us 20-25 years, and it's now Indians in America are as much part of the growth story of America, the American dream, as anybody else is. So Indians are value creators in America. We have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And a very peaceful diaspora that exists in America.
Fair enough.
So now, having said this,
yeah.
I think it is a matter of concern from many ways. There is this we want our outsourcing industry to keep prospering, keep working with American companies. I think the External Affairs Minister has already expressed a grave concern on the whole issue. The state governments have acted up.
No, but will it come up in the dialogue between the heads of state? As you're saying, the External Affairs Ministry has already expressed their concern. it could come up in secretary-level talks as well. After all, Mr. Jaishankar is in the United States as we speak. But will it come up in the heads of state-level talks as well, in the one-to-one dialogues, which are sure to happen
correct.
pretty soon?
Well, I think what I can say is that I think the first steps are being taken right now. The Foreign Secretary is in the U.S. Let's wait for those outcomes before we predict, and media tries to set the menu of what should be the discussion. But this is a very grave issue.
But the Indian American community is trying to set the menu, not the media.
Have to take
Mr. Gupta?
cognizance of the same. Indians are yeah, no. So no, I totally agree with that. What I'm saying is, if it's something that needs to be resolved, will be resolved at the appropriate time. The first steps first. The Foreign Secretary has already, has gone there. We are taking cognizance of what's happening, and I think appropriate steps will be taken, and at the appropriate levels. And if so, it will be discussed. There is no doubt about that. Prime Minister Modi has been very, very cognizant of Indians and diaspora, and his whole administration is. You see how responsive on the needs of the diaspora. So if there is something that is going fundamentally wrong, I think the Modi administration will be the first administration to take action.
Okay. Well, Pramit Pal Chaudhary, it's already becoming obviously, a political topic of discussion as well in the United States, not just with us in India and the Indian American community talking about it, but Hilary Clinton, the Democratic presidential nominee for 2016, also spoke out on this issue, saying, and I'm quoting her, with threats and hate crimes on the rise, we shouldn't have to tell the President of the United States to do his part. He must step up and speak out, and she obviously is implying that he's not doing that.
Yeah, and I think the Democrats will, as you would expect, hit out on him on this point. But I think more importantly are his Republican colleagues joining in on this, and so far I haven't heard anything. And that's the group that he'll be listening to. But we saw Sean Spicer has come out with a comment, the White House spokesperson. So what we say, the normal establishment institutional structure of government has responded.
That's right.
But as I said, Trump is very unusual. He's somewhat separated from that institutional system. And, the jokes are he watches Saturday Night Live and gets more angry about Alec Baldwin mimicking him than he does about anything else. So as I said, it's a very unusual presidency in that you have a president who essentially still lives a very non-political life and the establishment structure. But I think for a lot of Republicans, they will say, look, the fellow who had carried out the crime has been arrested. He's almost certain to be punished, possibly the death sentence. And so as far as the American system is concerned, hate crimes preceded Donald Trump's presidency. They'll continue after. And therefore, the system has done enough.
That's why I want to ask you, Mr. Chaudhary.
But the Republicans don't, if I'm a right-wing conservative, my argument will be, the minorities don't vote for me. Politically, what do I get out of this?
Okay.
Right? I may do so for humanitarian reasons, and I should do so because I'm a president of the country. But as a Republican politician, I'm looking at the Indian Americans and say 80% of them vote Democrat.
But, you were making, of course, the point that hate crimes happened before the Trump administration and they will continue to possibly happen after too. But do you feel, that the rhetoric on the campaign trail has actually emboldened
definitely. If you look at the statistics,
closet bigots, closet
if you look at the
racists,
statistics,
like this man, Adam,
Southern Poverty Law Center, the FBI, New York Police Department, all the statistics are clear. Even in just the 10 days after the Trump's election, there was a surge in hate crimes in the United States. Not necessarily all against minorities. Some of them are on the basis of color. A lot of them were also against Jews, for example. Half of the ones in New York were against Jews. And to be fair, Trump did come out. You may remember he came out and said people should stop this. But then after that he's fallen silent. To be fair, those crimes have now leveled off, and the rates have fallen back to more or less normal hate crime rates. But since then he's basically not seen this as something that he has to so far concern himself with.
Okay. Well, Mr. Shashank, you were hearing, of course, what Arvind Gupta was saying there, giving the government's perspective, giving the BJP's perspective. As I said, the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Jaishankar, is in the United States as we speak. Do you feel that these must come up? It's imperative that this comes up in his points that he wants to raise with his counterpart in the US. He's also apparently going to be raising the H-1B visa issue as well, which, of course, Arvind was referring to earlier about the outsourcing industry and the IT industry's concerns.
No, Arvind Gupta has mentioned this point very clearly, and I think it's very good that the government at the highest level should take it up with the Americans. What the Israelis have done, they have re-emphasized their importance to the American politics. And we have seen that if any attack takes place against the Jewish community, immediately the president speaks up because he is sensitized to the plight of the Jews. Now, in the case of the Indians who have become part of the knowledge economy, they have not yet reached that level of importance that the Jewish community has in the United States. Therefore, it's very important that we balance it, at least by the highest level of the Indian government, taking it up strongly, the partnership between the USA and India. And after all, in India, we have the greatest love and affection for the American people, as per the Pew reports and all other assessments which have been made in the past. So is it going to remain like that? Do they want it to remain like this? So I think that is an important issue and it should be taken up at the highest levels.
But going back to the personalization, keep this in mind, his son-in-law and his daughter are both Jews. Right, so for Trump, it's an immediate impact because his own family, half of it is Jewish. Right, so he will automatically respond. And as I said, it's all driven by what effectively comes into his life space at that particular point.
Well, Arvind Gupta, what would be the advice that the government would give to the Indian American community, and how you would assuage their fears? As as Mr. Shashank was mentioning earlier, in fact, Kuchibhotla's family had urged him to come back home, given the fears that still persist in the minds of the family members of Indian Americans and NRIs and students and other technicians who are working there.
See, I've said this in the past. For those of us who lived in the U.S., America also has its diversity, a huge diversity in the East Coast, West Coast, the rural America. There are many Americas within America in that sense. It's a united, federated federation of states. I have traveled in the recent past to DC, to New York, to the West Coast. What happened in Kansas, was clearly a hate crime, but the acceptance of Indians in general in the whole American society is very, very high. And I personally believe the only advice, if I had to give to my fellows who stay there in the U.S., is that this is not a time to incite anybody. I mean, and their safety is primary. But I think at large, the Indian American community should rally around, should create more awareness to parts of America where there is less awareness.
Okay, and how do you react, Arvind Gupta, how do you react to President Trump's silence on this issue? Do you feel it's genuine ignorance, or is it political posturing to let his, let his team members, let Sean Spicer do a press conference, let other people speak out on his behalf, but yet maintain silence himself? Is it sheer ignorance, or is it political posturing?
I somewhere disagree and agree with what Pramit said. On the disagreement side, I think I don't think so that the president of the U.S. is ignorant of this. He's very well aware. He probably gets his report, on a hourly basis or whatever. So it is not ignorance. If he's chosen to use the spokesperson on this route, there is something that is part of the establishment's response. He's done that with the thinking behind it. But having said that, maybe somewhere what Pramit agrees, he does react very fast for whenever something pinches him personally. So it's not pinched him personally yet, so he has not reacted himself, but the establishment has already reacted through the spokesperson. So that's what I would think is happening in his mind right now.
Okay, and you know, Pramit, the word literally used was absurd by Sean Spicer there. To any connect with the rhetoric of Donald Trump to incidents like this is absurd. Do you feel that's a defense that will cut ice with the family of Kuchibhotla and others who, of course, are tracking this issue, others who could be afraid of what might happen to them as well?
Well, I'm sure it wouldn't. If you have suffered like this as they have, you would automatically presume that the president's silence and, as you mentioned, both his campaign and some of his post-election rhetoric have contributed to this. So yes, no, I don't think they would be particularly happy with that statement. But Spicer was not talking to them. Spicer was almost certainly defending what you would expect him to do, is defend his own presidency, his White House.
Yeah.
And for him, obviously, he would not want to link a hate crime with what the president has said.
Okay. Well, stay with us, gentlemen, because we're going to take a very short break. We are, of course, talking about President Trump's outlook towards the incident. His reaction, remember, still hasn't come in, even though his team members have spoken out on what took place in Kansas, which is, of course, outraged and shocked the Indian-American community and, of course, left the family of Kuchibhotla quite upset. Srinivas Kuchibhotla, remember, was today cremated in his hometown of Hyderabad. Mr. Shashank, you were talking earlier, of course, about his family urging him to come back. They were scared. The Indian-American community, of course, may have fears there, but it's their family members back home, who are more afraid because they're the ones reading this through the media, and they've seen the kind of rhetoric through the Trump campaign, and they're seeing people like, Adam Purinton crop up now out of nowhere. What do you feel should be their concerns? What would you tell them or advise them?
I would suggest to the families of these Indian Americans living in the United States to advise their kith and kin to be cautious, not to go around so flagrantly, because there are communities which are very, very multicultural, very friendly. But because the world is flat these days, and many of the technical companies have moved into these areas, smaller towns, smaller villages, and this is likely to happen as President Trump is going to take several policy measures to regenerate the economies of these backyards, communities. So therefore, there would be more possibilities of jobs coming up in those areas. So I think they should be a little cautious, and that should be the advice given by the families to their family members living in these states.
What really should, Arvind Gupta, what really should India be expecting then from this relationship between the United States and India? If we're going to have economic issues crop up, like the IT industry's concerns and others, and also loss of revenue for our own companies because of, him cutting back outsourcing and concentrating on Make in America. We're going to have our Indian Americans and their families, you deal with tragedies like this. What kind of relationship are we looking at with the United States and India? Are we just looking at them combating Islamic terror and we'll be happy about that? What are our concerns and what is our outlook to this relation, Arvind?
See, it's a Indo-US relation is, I've always maintained, it's a bilateral relationship. I mean, while a lot of Indian technical manpower goes there on H-1B visas, a lot of work gets outsourced to India, and the balancing of the two is very important in terms of American competitiveness and the business competitiveness. A lot of businesses will cease to exist if they don't leverage outsourcing. What we also forget that it's in the interest of America to soothe and allay the fears of Indians. Last year, about 140,000 students enrolled in American universities from India, second highest to Chinese students. So this is a big revenue stream for American universities, and it's very important that America creates an environment and keeps the message very, very high that Indians are safe, are most welcome, and will continue to be more welcome in the U.S. And it's for the better of both the countries and their businesses.
Yeah, and it's ironical that Adam Purinton also, shouted in that bar where he, of course, was later arrested that I killed two Middle Easterners, but it was, of course, two Indians who were the target instead. So that's, of course, the ignorance of some of the people in America. But Pramit Pal Chaudhary, you've covered the whole run-up to the campaign, to the election of Donald Trump versus Hilary Clinton, and of course the rhetoric and India's fears, India's expectations from both of them. Now, of course, President Trump has come in place. What are your concerns, and what is your outlook to how our relation will be with President
I'm not worried about the economic front. H-1B visas have gone up and down in the past. It's not a major issue. Yeah. And in fact, that specific business model, if you talk to the IT industry, is dying right now. And I'm not too worried about Make in America. We have Made in India. The Chinese have launched Made in China.
That's true.
Every country does that. It's nothing major. We demand offsets whenever we buy an American airplane, 50% offsets in India to transfer jobs here. This is a standard practice of all governments. So on the economic front, I don't see a major problem. The real issue for me is strategic. We don't get a sense right now that President Trump has a strategic vision. In fact, I don't think he has one. He's ultimately a real estate developer. He's now putting together a team. We have Tillerson, McMaster, Mattis, Kelly, four extremely mainstream American foreign policy establishment types in office who are now starting to get their ministries back in play.
Okay.
They are going to be the men who are going to generate the actual foreign policy of the Trump administration. And I think the litmus test for us is really going to be China. What is your policy in China? Because even Pakistan for us is now a subset of the China policy.
Yeah.
What is your relationship going to be with China? And that is going to define the geopolitical mindset
so
of
that'll
the
be the litmus test. Yeah, that'll be the litmus test that we really need to look for. Arvind Gupta wholeheartedly agrees with you. He's nodding there in agreement.
Absolutely.
We'll have to leave it there. We're out of time. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. And let's hope that President Trump does speak out. And let's hope, of course, for our Indian-American brethren that there is a safer America and these sort of incidents don't repeat themselves too often in the near future. We leave it there. Thank you for being with us on Spotlight this evening.